Hi, my name is Ariel from the Children of Karma, and today I'd like to discuss Sun and Saturn aspects. The Sun is our life force, our reason for being, our purpose. It can even be our soul, our source, our spirit. And when it's tied to Saturn, this is opposite of the Sun on the Thema Mundi chart. This is the chart of the universe, and it's symbolic. So it means that these are two opposites. Saturn is also about just integrating the shadow side. This aspect is very practical and will be seeing reality. You cannot, they cannot be whisked away by kind of the illusions of, a Neptune. So they're very much practical and disciplined and earthbound. Sun represents light and warmth. And Saturn represents the darkness and cold. So it is about integrating these two into your life. And depending on where you are in that cycle, the Sun will move faster than Saturn. So where it is will kind of determine where you are in that cycle of kind of separating from that Saturn. And Saturn, the Sun, can both represent the father. So this kind of shows a very strict father. It could be even strict religious household, but very disciplined. He wanted things a certain way. He needed things a certain way, and you had to kind of follow the rules. If you showed your identity in any way, it would be restricted. It would be disciplined even, and this could even be a father who just fails to live up to those duties. He's even a burden. He could though have health issues, and this is why he couldn't perform those fatherly duties. But there's a sense within the person with this aspect that father just was just not there, was just not able to provide that the Saturn lessons in life, like the authority, feeling like your own authority in your life. So this could be missing because it just was not given. And no identity can even be received from the father with this aspect. It's like you have to separate yourself. That Sun is moving away from Saturn. Redefine what that masculine energy means within you. It's that go-getter energy. It's having a passion and chasing it. That will to go, that will to live. And with Saturn involved, it can provide things like alienation and depression and insecurities, feeling like you're not good enough. You'll even see Saturn in your own visibility and how you're seen. It's maybe you're seen as a disciplined person, someone who's reserved, maybe cold like Saturn, practical, no nonsense kind of person, can be very ambitious. But also remember, these are spectrums of energy. So whatever the interpretation is, you can also have the opposite. You can be very ambitious with this aspect, but you could also have no ambition at all. It could be very depressed and feeling alone and feeling like, what is the point? With this aspect, you do have to integrate those obstacles. They exist in life, and this aspect is presented with them, and they have to face them. It reminds me of that Shakespeare play, The Tempest, where the main character is trying to incorporate Caliban, the shadow version of self, see that shadow version of self as a human. Once he does see that shadow as a human being, the healing process can begin from there. And it's about seeing maybe the not so nice parts of our personality and learning to accept them. Maybe there's shame even around the father and how he behaved. Maybe there are leftover traumas, like Saturn can be control. Was he very controlling? Did he actually show you that, well, control equals care? And so now you're carrying that with you throughout life and controlling your environment around you and passing it off as, I care. This is how I care. It's sometimes we can forget how that makes us feel as children, and that kind of passion we had inside as a child, that I'm never going to do this when I get older, and then you end up doing it because it's just patterns that we're just, it's very difficult to get out of. And Saturn has a cycle, at age 28 to age 30, we go through that Saturn return, and that big monster of an event occurs that brings maturity. Once it happens, Saturn starts to release its binds. Release me from your binds with your good hands, Saturn, please. So usually at 35, plus, you start to feel it loosening up, and you learn how to work with that difficulty. You learn how to work with that energy. With Saturn, you have to accept that there are obstacles, that not everything is going to be rosy. Women with this aspect, they also have that difficulty asserting self as well. It's even difficulty with men, maybe seeing men as controlling. Maybe even finding partners that are Saturnian, that are very controlling, wanting to put limits on you. Even with men, there's a need to prove yourself to the father, and feeling the responsibility if that relationship is somehow complicated or it dissolves somehow, feeling that responsibility. Saturn can sometimes have difficulty with what is my responsibility and what is not my responsibility. That controlling the environment, that's not your responsibility, actually. Control yourself, that's all. Actually, it's easier, to just control yourself. Remember how it felt when you were controlled, and you may be doing that to others, in your adult life. Showing strength through force. Sometimes that's what we learn through a father with aspects like this. Sometimes that's what we learn. A father is very controlling and sometimes very forceful with those boundaries that they set up and those restrictions. Sometimes we can learn that this is how we should assert ourselves, is through force. And it's about breaking those patterns, breaking those. We knew that they were wrong. We knew they were wrong when we were children. So it's just about breaking those. Being aware of it really is a huge help, because that inner voice of yours will call you out on it, every time, every single time it sees it. Once you become aware, it'll call you out, and then you'll have to do something about it. This aspect can even self-sabotage, maybe even afraid of your own visibility, afraid of shining, and you can hurt yourself in that process. When looking at the Sun-Saturn cycle, eventually they meet again, and there's an understanding of both of those energies. It's like, well, now I've traveled around the chart, and I've learned through all these many different signs and houses, all the lessons without you. And now I'm back to make meaning of it, to bring understanding, to move past it in a mature Saturnian way. Thank you for joining me for this video, and I'd love to see you at thechildrenofkarma.com so we can find your ancestral patterns. We can become aware and release them once and for all. Don't forget to like the video. Bye.